All right. Welcome, friends. David Fisher here, your host of the David Fisher Show. We are recording from Amherst Fit Body Boot Camp, Amherst, New Hampshire. And today we're going to talk a little bit about storytelling. But first, let me thank everybody that has liked, subscribed, added comments, and gotten some value out of the previous episodes, and certainly to take a moment to welcome those joining us for the first time. Happy that you're able to join us, and hopefully there is something that you will get out of this message today that helps you in your journey. That is the mission here, to get a little bit better today over yesterday. Certainly easier said than done. So why storytelling? I thought that would be a good topic of discussion because it has been very important in my own journey. And again, I am not a subject matter expert on personal development. These are really just my thoughts, views on my own reflection, my own opinions on personal development. And having spent 5 decades on this planet so far. By the way, I am going to live to 127. So if we do the math on that, I have 73 years left to go here. So certainly hoping to encourage myself to, continue to be a learner. But anyway, the mission here is to get a little bit better today versus yesterday. And one of the ways that I've discovered helpful is by taking back that pen and really writing my own story. So storytelling has been around probably since the beginning of mankind being able to communicate. So it has been an integral part of human history. It is changed, of course, especially with technology. There are movies now, there are, certainly have been plays, books. As I was mentioning, the oral tradition has gone back probably further than any other, certainly long before written tradition has taken place, being able to tell stories. And it reminds me of some of the stories that I learned as a kid. One of those was a book called The Giving Tree. It was probably the biggest or most influential story that I remember as a child, and have passed on that tradition with my own kids, reading them stories as infants and toddlers. And maybe that's something that I really should get back to. That doesn't really happen anymore, but sharing stories with each other, they're more anecdotal now at this point, but stories are a great way to communicate with each other, whether they're, long passed down stories, or, stories of, how's your day? I just think of my kids, and, the answer to that is good, right? It's a one-word answer. So, I'm gonna have to do a little bit, maybe change my way I ask that question, right, to perhaps solicit a different answer. But I wanted to get into why I wanted to talk about this today. And for my own story, I've spent many decades feeling lost. And part of the reason that I have struggled so much with that feeling of not being able to, find myself, has been the stories that I actually tell myself. One of the biggest aha moments that I had in recent years was listening to a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet. I've probably mentioned him before. He's a pretty influential podcaster in certainly the personal development space. And one of the first podcasts that I had listened to a few years back, talking about life happening for him rather than life happening to him. And really the message in that was that being a victor versus being a victim. So life happening for me is an opportunity for what can I learn? What am I able to take away from this, versus life happening to me, I'm reactionary. The light turned red, that's why I'm late for whatever I'm trying to get to. I can't find a parking spot. It can be as simple as, traffic. It can be way more complex as to, not being able to, find a partner, a job, or not being able to be healthy, being sick. This is all life happening to me, for example, versus life happening for me, being able to find that purpose in whatever is happening. Certainly, that has been a big part of trying to change a mindset around what story am I telling myself? Am I telling myself the story of I can't do this, I can't do it, or I can do it? Reminds me of the Henry Ford saying, whether I believe I can or I can't, I'm right. So I wanted to use an analogy here of the Matrix. Some of you guys might be familiar with Keanu Reeves. He's the, Neo, the main character in the movie The Matrix. There's been, probably 3, maybe I think 4 sequels on that. And the moral of the story has really to do with how in reality is interpreted, right? The plot is machines have taken over Earth, using humans as essentially batteries. Being able to break out of that reality and be a free thinker has a whole different set of problems with it. Now you're much more aware of your surroundings and the reality, not the one that has been essentially computer generated. But the moral of the story has more to do with how are you able to help others instead of competing with others, in order to kind of have that ability to improve over your past. So looking at today, how are we getting better than the history? And again, much like the mission here at the David Fisher Show is trying to get a little bit better today than yesterday. And that's why I thought the movie Matrix would be a really good analogy to kind of tie in that message of how do you create an impact through emotional and cognitive growth. So I thought I'd highlight a couple of thoughts on that. Certainly identity, who am I, right? So again, using the character Cypher in that movie, he was somebody that was much more happier being in the Matrix, not knowing what the reality was. That is, who am I? Well, if I am a free thinker and now I am facing all these problems, being told what to think or having my reality created for me might actually be a better way to go. It's just one of the most powerful 2 words in the English language, right? I am. I am, fill in the blank. For myself, I'm a business owner, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I am, right? What we fill in is how part of at least how we are creating that identity, and from there perhaps creating values which help to bolster or reaffirm that identity. Then there's also the empathy and emotional intelligence piece of that. So let me just kind of clarify the empathy part, right? Because that's really kind of how we connect with other people, listening, which could lead to compassion. That's really more helping other people versus the empathy of the connecting piece. Great book, by the way, about self-compassion. Kristen Neff. She also has a TED Talk out there, NEFF. which has been very helpful for myself in trying to understand a little bit more about that self-compassion piece. But let me speak a little bit about the emotional intelligence part of that, creating that impact on personal development through storytelling. So one of the lessons that I had learned in the Modern Day Night Project, and again, for those that are not familiar with the Modern Day Night Project, 75-hour men's personal development program, fully immersive. Happy to chat with anybody more on that. But there was a lesson that took place during the project that had a lot to do with emotional discipline. So certainly emotional intelligence, not anything that I was not unfamiliar with, but not having that, I guess, really self-awareness. Great book out there by Travis Bradbury called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. There's actually a self-assessment test that you can take in there that was, at least for myself, pretty revealing as to where some of the things that I could, potentially be working on, increasing that emotional intelligence. A little bit different than IQ, where that's typically a fixed number. Emotional intelligence, we can increase that number, really starting off by awareness. And as you go through that book and learn more about emotional intelligence, there are a lot of other areas that you can focus on and gain some self-mastery with. But also, there is the resilience and coping mechanism that is developed through storytelling. So I've talked about this in the past on previous podcasts. Again, I'll mention some great resources that are out there. Tim Grover's book on resilience. Winning is another one of his books. Highly recommend. I've mentioned Jason Redman before. Lieutenant Redman, former Navy SEAL, has a book out there, The Trident, but more specifically, his book Overcoming really talks about how being resilient and coping with adversity is a great method for, again, what story are we going to create in our lives. I certainly don't want to give away his story, but being ambushed on a mission was, for most people, would have been like, hey, you know what, that's too bad. That's really a sad situation. But he chose to really use that as a platform for how is he going to move beyond that and still have a life that is happening for him rather than a life that's happening to him, right? He talks very much about being that victor over victim mentality and what that takes. So there's also certainly Stoicism. That's a great philosophy. There are lots of books out there about Stoicism. In a nutshell, goes all the way back to ancient Greek philosophers that really had a viewpoint on life where the obstacle in life, it really is meant to be the path, right? That the mountain is the journey that we're supposed to be on in life. It's not trying to find a way around it or under it, or it's being able to embrace that fact that, through the struggles that we face, those are actually, again, opportunities, life happening for us rather than life happening to us, and being able to, again, try to create that story of, here's where I have the ability to move forward, to take that, what could for some be a tragedy, and create that into a superpower. So that has been one of the things that for myself, trying to figure out where are, my superpowers, right? We all have our own unique story. I've told you bits and pieces of my story, being adopted, growing up in upstate New York. My mother was very sick growing up. number of heart attacks, strokes. She was a diabetic, so that was a experience that, not saying that it's unique to me, but certainly has influenced my way of thinking and my relationships, not only with myself, but of course with other people. So how do I interpret my own stories? What do I tell myself? So that's really kind of why I wanted to connect in, those coping and resilience topics. And then of course, communication, right? That is how we actually sort out our thoughts in our own experience, just like I was just doing, right? Having a meaningful conversation with somebody, that has been probably one of the biggest gifts in my personal development journey, and especially coming through the Modern Day Net Project and being a graduate, is having conversations that have more substance to them, not necessarily having to, talk about things that really don't necessarily have much impact on me. What team is, winning at whatever, event is going on. It's more of a distraction than anything else. It kind of takes my focus away from where am I trying to, again, move that needle in my own life, whether it's my faith, my family, my fitness, or my finances. Those four foundational pillars that hopefully are helping me to have that life of fulfillment, or as I've tried to, very subjective, right? What is fulfillment? For me, I really started to gravitate more towards the concept of harmony. I had picked that up from Rob Dyrdek, if you guys remember Rob and Big, or the show Ridiculous on MTV. He is the host of that, and he has a podcast, and he is very much into systematizing his life in a way that helps him to, again, get a little bit better every day. It's not a unique concept, but it is not easy to do. And then, lastly, there's the sense of belonging, that community, that I am not alone. I don't necessarily need to, suffer in silence. There are a lot of people that are adopted. There are a lot of people that are recovering from, alcoholism. There are a lot of people that have had, sick parents. But having those connections is a great way to understand that, I'm not alone. Others have gone before me, gone through something similar, that, hopefully I can share experiences with, or I can perhaps learn from other people's experiences, so that, again, being able to story tell, it's a more meaningful way to really have that human connection, and to, again, hopefully help other people in their journey, and to talk about it for myself or ourselves, and create those meaningful connections. So I want to take another minute here to thank you guys for tuning into the David Fisher Show. And again, we're just trying to get a little bit better today than yesterday. So on that note, guys, just in case no one has told you, you are worth it. Please, my friends, hopefully you took something away from this, and I will look forward to our next meeting. Until then, take care, guys.